From an undisclosed locations, for reasons of security and insecurity, we present to you MnR live TV show. And tonight, we're going to have a special guest, Rob House. We're going to be talking about Jack the Ripper. Was there a Masonic connection to Jack the Ripper, or a real conspiracy, or is it something different? Well, tonight we've got author Robert House, who's going to be coming on at 8:15, talking about it with his great book, Jack the Ripper and the Case for Scotland Yard's Prime Suspect. But before we get to that, let me introduce to you the one and the only from Montreal, the Madman, McCafe, Mario the Madman.
Robert, yes, it's great to be back.
It sure is. It feels like we've been gone a long time. And last week on our show, we had to pre-tape it because we had Dr. C.K. Quarterman talking about Ebola, but he couldn't come on. So now tonight's our first live show in I think about a month. And my God, does it feel great to be back? I mean, all day we were really like looking forward to it, weren't we?
Yes, and a lot of things have happened. So we have to kind of catch up to the time, to everything that we've been missing. We have to catch up. What?
I have my fries. I don't want no ketchup.
I'm not talking ketchup. Catch up.
Okay, ketchup. Okay, I heard ketchup.
Potatoes. We got to catch up to it. Yes. And there's a lot of things that have happened, so we're going to go back into a little bit of time and just catch up to what has happened since we've done a show live, which is like you're saying, it feels like it's almost a month. Probably.
Maybe it is. Yeah, I don't know the exact date, but it probably is, because 3 weeks we had off, and then 1 week we did, so it's like a month, you know. But yeah, it's a worldwide transmission brought to you by the Montreal Anti-Illuminati Task Force in collaboration with 12160.info.
All right, so now we're going to be switching, I would say. Yeah, that's good. We just, we got to do what we got to do.
But before we get to that, are you happy? We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, Jack the Ripper.
Yes, we're going to be talking about
serial killer.
In the next half an hour, we're going to be talking about that. We'll be back with that. But now we're going to be talking about the intro and what's happening in the news, and it's very important that we get to say what's happening in the news and what has happened and our take and everything, right?
Yeah, so go ahead, do what you gotta do.
All right. So here we go. Are you okay, Rob? Could you see this?
Hold on 1 second. Can I see this? Yeah, I could see it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is the 12160. This is where Robert posts, the latest shows that are always out there. You see right there's a description. You got the title. Then right underneath, of course, if you don't see the video, you just go and you click refresh. Very easy to do. I mean, if you bookmark it or if you find this link somewhere. So there you go. You see, I did it for you. I demonstrated it for you. It's right there. There's the video. You just click play, and you'll see us live. Or when the show gets recorded, it's going to be there. And then you got right there.
Can't miss us.
No. And then right here you got Chatango, right? And you can interact with us. You can tell us how you feel. Be nice, be diplomatic about it. So
love us, hate us, but you can never forget us.
No, and that's it. So this is 12160. Bookmark it if you can. I'll show you exactly. Well, we'll show you exactly where you can find it coming up very soon. Right, Rob?
That's right.
Next. It's the MnR Productions
blog.
Mariolaur.blogspot.ca. And this is the same thing, same principle. You got the title, the description, you got our beautiful video, you got Chatango, you got our old video clips from when we started back
2007.
2006.
Yeah.
It's like our history, it's like a deep history. And then you have all the older shows. There's last week's show. I mean, I just love this blog. You know, it's a beautiful blog. Well, I have to remove that. But anyhow, just you know, this blog will appear underneath in the description of the video clip.
Exactly, it
Of
will.
this week's video clip. So bookmark it if you care, right?
Yeah, yeah, if you care. Now let's get on to the next part of the show.
Now it's this. This is what I really love.
The granddaddy of them all, the conspiracy talk, and I think there's been like 100 people joining since last Wednesday.
Yeah, it's right there. You see that?
Well, actually, someone new, but I don't know. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's like I've never seen it grow this much, and I don't mean to toot my horn, but have you ever seen it like this?
No, I don't know, man. People just...
Like 9, 10, 11, 12 people per day in the morning. I get up and I got all these people that join the conspiracy talk, but that's great because the fastest growing conspiracy group on Facebook today, the conspiracy talk, folks.
Yes, so we'll just dig it deep into this. Now, this is where you find the latest show, always on top. It's always pinned, so you could always go there and be updated. You know, it's right there. It's you just it's clear. You know, that's what I love about this group. I could spend hours on this group. There's just so much things happening. You know, people just keep posting up and commenting, and we're exchanging details, and I mean, there's just so much. I even post up quite a bit. You know, I don't want to post up too much, but people, be nice. You know, I mean, have some class in this. Don't be a troller. Me, one thing I don't like is when people troll. They come and troll,
and they assume stuff, and when they assume stuff, they make an ass out of you and of me. You know what I mean? Without actually knowing us. You know.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. I mean, do leave comments in the video below, though. That we like, you know. That's what makes our day. It's like, you know,
Exactly.
but be nice. Don't come and troll, and don't leave stuff about sunglasses, because us, we don't tolerate that. As soon as we see someone posting up sunglasses, or there's a McDonald's coupon rebate for $125,
Yeah.
me, as much as I like that, I'm not. That is off. We ban you. We'll just ban you off the group. You know, don't push our buttons, people.
Because you won't like it. Yeah. So a lot of
So that's it.
a lot of
Right? I mean, I could just go on, but I don't want to bore people. But join it. If whoever's out there, join it on here. And we also have the same thing going on the Google Plus community. We also have something called the Conspiracy Talk, and it's growing, and a lot of action on there too, but I'm focusing more on Facebook because it seems like Facebook is more popular right now.
In time, we'll tell what will be more popular. But yeah, so that's the Conspiracy Talk, you know, talking about Ebola, talking about all kinds of stuff.
There's my favorite singer, D. freaking Schneider.
And look at him. Me and him wear the same tight skin.
Yes, Robert. Yes, Robert.
I had to say it.
Freaking proud of that all the time.
Yes, because you know how I feel about
that,
the metal of the 80s, you know?
Was thanks to that, we were late for the Metro the last time. So you could see people could see the Metro clip.
But yeah, they could see them. But today I brought my skinny jeans just in time. Like we didn't have to miss the show. I almost missed the show because of me buying skinny jeans. Black skinny jeans. They're the best Metallica jeans. But anyhow, enough.
Anyhow.
Because one day I'm going to do a show about skinny jeans.
No, Rob. Come on, man. I mean, this is a conspiracy talk. It's not a fashion show. If you want to see fashion show, you go and...
But there's a conspiracy between fashion show, too. I could find, but we're not going to get into that now. So now, what's the next?
Okay. So now, like as I was saying, well, we had to catch up, right?
Right.
Because a lot of news has happened ever since. Now, this has hit me, like, you know.
Busted MH17 was in fact lost flight MH370 updates.
But this isn't new to me because I knew that this was. My gut feeling told me that was the same plane. This is not new to me. It shouldn't be new to nobody.
It's just unreal, you know, that it's the same plane, but yet they try and deviate from what the truth is over here. And look, it's the original photo and it's photoshopped.
And I found this, by the way, this article on the Conspiracy Talk. Thank you for whoever posted it at the time. I said I had to keep it in the vault for the MnRTV live show. Now, I mean, I'm just going. I don't know if you see anything interesting, Rob, but I mean, it's like it's so logical that it was the same plane, right?
Yeah, that's what my mentor said. It's the same plane.
I mean, the plane gets missing. Now they bomb a plane. Probably there was no passengers, and also the passport. I was told that many passports were wrong. Were not wrong, but faked.
Exactly. Well, it's just a psyop operations by the government. You know, what do you expect about that? It's just unreal. You know, I'm not going to get in detail, but you guys know what we're talking about, and I'm sure that they do, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Because they want Russia to look bad. I don't. There's so many things that don't add up about these two planes.
Exactly.
I mean,
so, yeah,
it's very interesting.
I mean, the links will be up. Once
yes,
the recorded, if you guys want to, if any of you are particularly interested in this article or any article that we do, you guys can research it after the show's recorded.
Yes, because it'll be in the description underneath the video. You know,
yeah,
we always do that. I have to repeat myself, but you know, because for the new people, we have to repeat ourselves.
Well, there's new people all the time, every week. Well, when we do the show, you know, because don't forget, folks, this is a worldwide transmission. Going live everywhere and will be recorded. Anyone with internet access can listen to it, even on a smartphone, tablet, Android, Apple, iPad, anything.
So anyhow, it was the same plane. So what we'll do is we'll leave it as that. I mean, it's a very long article.
Yeah, we don't want to. Yeah, I could see how long it is. You could do a whole show just on one article. Yeah, so we might as well get to the next one, you know.
I want to see if there's more, a little bit more. You see here they compare the plane everywhere. I mean, there's so much detail in all this article. Wow, when I found this, I said, you know.
Yeah, Operations Northwood is exposed.
But there's another article on the same thing. We'll stick on the same subject. It's basically the same, almost the same, containing the same information, but
hold
on, let me just focus.
MH17 verdict. Real evidence to USTF cover up a failed false flag. I was just going to say that this is a false flag, and this is obviously older news because it's from July 25th, 2014 when we weren't around, but until this past Monday, the downing of Malaysian airplane flight MH17 on July 17, 2014 was a potential game changer for global geopolitics and the new Cold War. However, a funny thing happened on the way to Kremlin. And it talks about how this is a false flag operation with Russia and the Ukraine, and what the media source says. Because there's a lot of strange anomalies that it says will be in connection with the MH370. And there's like an investigation going on.
And this is all to make war against Russia and make Russia look like the bad guys because they don't like Putin because he's rebelling, right?
Anti-NWO.
Yeah, so.
And it was also just led to the brink of war. Thank God there wasn't any war, you know. But there's always going to be wars and rumors of war. Yeah,
that's for sure. So this one shows like the flights and again, this is another great article that I stumbled upon, and I found it on one of the Conspiracy Talks. I believe it's the one on the Facebook. So it's, you know.
Oh yeah, exactly. So if you guys want to see this information more, well, you just go in our links after the show's recorded to our links. If you guys are interested, whoever's particularly interested in this, then this information has a lot of information about the missing plane and its connection.
Anyhow, it's the same one. In a nutshell, it's the same plane, the one that was missing with the one that they bombed.
Exactly, it was.
I know what it is, Robert. People are going to ask, What was that plane? How come you never covered that plane? Well, because we were on vacation and we were away from.
But yeah, but you know, when this whole outbreak of Ebola, I want to come back from vacation, but we couldn't. Remember, I said we have to go, but we had to be on vacation too. You know.
Okay, the next article.
Now corporations are creating a life-threatening water shortage. Yeah, right. And what do they put in this water?
How water is vital to us. People forget how water is so vital to us.
Yeah, well, the earth is made, what, 3/4 of water, and our bodies. Imagine the swift and fierce government response if Al-Qaeda took a precious resource out of delicate environment, sold it for profit, and endangered 40 million people in the process. Now compare that example to the non-existent government response to American energy companies, golf course, and corporations like Nestle taking 75% of the groundwater out of the Colorado River Basin, and when the American West is facing a record drought. Yeah, so I don't know about you, man, but we're not going to be talking about this article. I just don't know. I just want to mention that I'm not too crazy about bottled water. The salt
No, because like guys, I posted up a while ago on the conspiracy talk for all the people that are following us on there. What's bottled water? First of all, the container that they put it in, the bottle, I should say, that they put it in, is plastic. It's that if you leave it out in the sun, it'll kill you, right? And then 90% of the bottles 90% of the waters that they fill those bottles with have what inside?
Fluoride.
Which we spoke about on the show. I mean, on the conspiracy talk group all the time.
And which I would add a lot of sodium. So the more I drink it, the more thirsty I get, and it doesn't console me. I have to buy more and more water. So it's all BS. And you know how much the bottled water that they sell? My gosh, it's like unbelievable at the supermarket.
Boycott bottled water. It's dangerous. It's garbage.
All it is to make money, to make more. Think of it, how much money they would lose if they never sold bottled water to begin with.
Wow.
It's just unreal how much at the store that they buy cases and cases and cases, which some have salt water, and the worst that they have is, even worse than salt, is fluoride.
Okay. Next.
Yes. The next article, did you get that from Conspiracy Talk?
Yes, I did, and then I saw you posted it a while ago, but I think it was yesterday. I said, but it's okay, we'll use it. Google
Maps has been tracking your every move, and there's a website to prove it. I did the test. However, my Google Maps is off. Like the location on my cell phone here is off, and they couldn't. But this is for people that don't know. Remember the scene in Minority Report when Tom Cruise is on the run from the law, but is unable to avoid detection because everywhere he goes there are constant retina scans feeding his locations back to a central base? That's tomorrow. Today Google is tracking wherever your smartphone goes and putting a neat red dot on a map to mark the occasion. Ew! How dainty they are at putting a nice little red mark everywhere you've been. Now think of it.
Okay, as we think it like that, like, they're tracking us down. But in a way, if we go missing, like, I mean, for the good is, they're missing.
But how many people go missing?
But, yeah, how many times do we go missing? I mean, unless if we got Alzheimer's.
Or if you get kidnapped. If you fall.
You think the kidnappers want to actually take us with the phone? I don't think so.
Unless they're dumb, they don't see the phone. But
then
but by the time they were declared missing, it'll take a while. Because look, I mean, you go kidnapped, it doesn't mean people don't know right away. If we got kidnapped today, they wouldn't know. They think we're out working or whatever, just out. By the time it happens, they'll have shut down the phone. So it's just more of controlling, and they want a big brother us and monitor us. I don't know about you, but I just figure that's what they do.
Well, yeah, Rob, but the thing is, it's like I said, it works for the good, or it could work for the bad, For them, when they track us for no reason, that's bad. But when we go missing, then it's for the good. But we're just
exactly.
Okay, next, next, our show isn't just about conspiracies. It's also about what's out there to help us, to be better, to better ourselves, to better our lives, to, be useful if some tragedy were to happen, right? So now this is when I stumble upon this, and this I think was somewhere, I think it was either on the Google Plus conspiracy talk.
This weed is one of the most useful medicinal plants on the planet. You stepped on it, ignored it, and tried to eradicate it from your lawn. However, the innocuous little weed is one of the most useful medicines on the planet, just begging to be harvested. There are two types of plantain in BC, Canada: Lance and Brolef. Generally, all 200 plus variety of plantain yield the same results. It grows especially well in poor rocky soil, such as driveways, and often seen alongside down the line. More often than not, you will see plantain growing in gravel pits and construction sites as nature seeks to regenerate the soil.
As nature, yeah, seeks to. Anyhow, you know what? I do notice these plants every once in a while. In fact, today I stepped on one by accident. I'm like,
I was going to say that, but we step on it. We don't care for it, and the cures is right there. To many illnesses, it's right under us, but we don't see it.
Rob, remember this plant, okay? Because you notice it. It's everywhere. You notice it, and I think it says somewhere in here what it can do. You see, it tells you all here. I mean, it's something to keep. Look at that.
It heals the digestive system. This is especially useful for anyone who has been damaged by antibiotics, anti-inflammatory or pain medications. That's me. Food allergies or celiac diseases. Both leaves and seeds specifically target the digestive system for healing. These leaves may be steeped as tea, added to soups, or dried with a sauce similar to kale chips. The seeds, a type of psyllium, can be ground or soaked for bulk mucilage or absorbable fiber, which consumed before meals may help with weight loss. So you see, folks, it has a lot of information here that it can do.
Oh, look at this. It also is good for soothing. We can't say the word, even though it's a medical word.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we could say it, but it's painful hemorrhoids.
I mean, it's very...
It's good for lung problems, coughs, and colds.
Now, were you aware of this plant, Robert, before the show?
No, I wasn't.
You see, me neither. But then, I said, let me just...
It's good for human body, treating everything from menstrual difficulties to digestive systems to nearly skin complaints and even arthritis. Add to salads, chew to ease thirst, or enjoy in stir fries. The versatile wild vegetable will keep you in good health for years to come. That's it. We must get some.
It's growing on our lawns, for Pete's sakes. I see it everywhere, this plant. We should try it, Rob.
That's what I'm saying.
Is there more?
No, that's about it.
But they're saying BC, Canada, but it could be just about 90% of the time, just about anywhere. So you see, when I find these things, I say, let me post it because, and another thing, Rob, I mean, the Indians know about all this because this is their land, the native, and they're so useful because they know all these plants. As you think we know about these plants, as we know nothing about these plants. Every plant has something out there that's amazing.
No, for sure.
Kind of like marijuana.
Marijuana.
No, marijuana.
Okay, I heard marijuana.
No.
That should be your new name, marijuana.
Now, we're going to move on up. This is from Yahoo News.
Yeah. Toronto police received several UFO reports. Object remains unexplained. And that's not that far away from us.
No.
Well, 6-7 hours away, but I'm just saying Toronto, Montreal.
There's a video here, which of course we can't play because, we're infringing on the on, what is it?
Copyrights.
Yes, we're infringing. I don't know what that means, but it means something. So this is the picture of the UFO right there. You see the little dot there?
Yeah,
That's
where was it again? Does it say where?
Toronto, North York.
Oh, North York. I know that place. I know some people that live there. North York.
You see
Yeah,
someone got invaded?
I don't know. North York. That's it. I'm going to North York with one of my friends. Strange light spotted up in the sky.
Wait, hold on. Okay, there you go.
Spotted up in the sky in Willowdale. What's going on? And this was,
There it is again. So the aliens and UFOs
that's a UFO right there on a different flying objects.
Are really happening everywhere, you know?
It was really high up and was right bright and shining. Sun told the Toronto Star. At first I thought it was stars or something, but it was too bright to be. I didn't know what it was. Wow. So that means there was a UFO right there.
Yeah.
In North York.
And there's so many videos, and you know, they don't come to Montreal. I wonder why.
No, well, we don't know. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's been some. Because I did a research once, and there's been some in Montreal. I did some research, but I don't know if there's been any recently. There was one a couple of years ago in Côte St. Luc. Remember, there was a doctor that seen it.
And I know the doctor personally. So that article. That's found on the Yahoo.
Mainstream Yahoo.
Now we're just going to stick to UFOs up until, you know, up until we get Trish, right?
Yeah.
Because she's like asking, oh, I feel she's like feeling bored.
It's been a long time she hasn't been on.
Yeah. She's like, what's happening? Are you guys out of business? She was saying. I said, no. We'll be around. You see the title of this?
Yes, retired U.S. soldier claims he spent 17 years battling aliens on Mars. I've seen this article before. A former U.S. Marine has since sensationally claimed that he has spent nearly a decade battling aliens on Mars.
Now, how could this be, Robert? How could this be?
I'm not entirely sure. The ex-Marine who goes by the name of Captain K, says there are 5 human colonies on the Red Planet and has spent 17 years fighting to protect them. Serving in a space fleet known as the Earth Defense Force, they recruited military personnel from countries like America, Russia, and China. The one-time ex-naval infantryman was training to fly a variety of bombers and Star Wars-like space fighters. He then spent his time protecting the colonies from Martians who presumably wanted to take over and make their planet their own. Captain K's incredible testimony to Exo News TV does not end with Mars either. Whoa! What is that?
What do you mean, what is that? It's a gray, it's a fallen angel. Remember these dirty, ugly things?
I was going to say, it's
Look at yourself in the mirror, you dirty, ugly thing. Look at that.
Look at it. I just don't know how. I always thought fallen angels were supposed to be good looking.
No, this one, he's fallen. His wings have been clipped off.
Look at him, though. Spacecraft training apparently took place on the moon as well as on Saturn's moon, Titan, and even in deep space. His retirement ceremony after 20 years of service also took place on the moon, with guests including ex-U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. We know you're all laughing, but what if he's telling the truth? So what, they're saying that Donald Rumsfeld was on the moon?
Looks like.
That's funny, man. So if we see him and I tell him, yeah, so I heard you on the moon, he probably would send me packing, no?
Yeah, he would. Then there'd be no more Robert from MnR.
No, because you're not. Yeah, so that's it. We've got to find Donald Rumsfeld, get him on the phone, tell him, yeah, what's this story you on the moon? You don't tell us. He'll probably want to hit us and say like this, to the moon, right?
Yeah, from the gutter.
But look at this ugly thing over here. Look at it.
We're moving on to the next article.
It's not really pictured now.
We can't look at that too much. You'll drive us crazy. Now this is I think we're on modern news. Now we're going to be touching on modern news. Now we're all up to date. Are you happy?
Yeah,
Modern news sticking to UFOs.
UFO
Hold
watchers.
on, Rob. Hold on. There's something I must do. Oh, it's not coming. Oh, yeah. I have to stop the video
Okay.
because there was a video coming and we don't want to infringe on anything
No, we
again.
don't. Not at all. No. So right there, UFO watchers spot mysterious bone-like objects on Mars. Now, if you see this picture over here, it looks like a bone. Are you able to bring it down?
Yes, I am. Everything is possible with MnRTV live show. Everything.
Everything and anything, and sometimes nothing is possible.
But everything gets done. Now here's a picture. See the bone? You see the rocks? Like, how did it get there? And I'm surprised NASA didn't block this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Should I go? Wait, should we read more, or you want to look at pictures like what I normally do? Because me, I look at pictures all the time. Pictures and videos is what I like looking at the most, you know?
I like reading, but sometimes I get tired of reading.
I know you're a very hard reader, you know? You like to read.
Exactly. Reading. When I like stuff, it just relaxes me.
I don't know if there's much things to. No, it's a very small article. We'll look at the next picture. There's 121 pictures. I mean, 27 pictures. One of 27. You see that?
Yeah. So yeah, we're not gonna look at all of them, but yeah. So there's a bone structure. Could that be the fallen Nephilims, the giants?
It definitely cannot be a dinosaur now.
When they died, that's the bones. Maybe there was giant Nephilims on Mars also.
We don't know. Listen, there's portals that they had, eh?
And they still have portals now.
Oh,
I
here
never,
it is. Look at that. You see?
yeah.
Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs on Mars. You heard it on MnRTV live show.
And also Donald Rumsfeld on the moon.
Now this, I don't know what this picture's all about, but there I
Yeah.
see a light. Maybe it's a star or...
Right there is something. The red planet, they call it. There's a lot of mystery on Mars that NASA never a straight answer.
A cat on Mars. Rob, I gotta go to Mars. There's a cat there.
That's a cat?
Yeah, right there. Look.
Oh,
Yeah, you see
yeah.
the head, the body. But this is like a cloud now. You know when you look at a cloud in the shape of and a cat?
Yeah. But they're dogs too, do you know?
But yeah, you make whatever you want from it.
And chicks.
A toy boat left on Mars. Can you see it?
Oh, no, I can't see it.
No, I'm lacking my imagination. I'm still on vacation mode, Rob.
Okay.
No, I'm very sorry. I'm lacking my imagination tonight. I'm trying hard to get back to the program. A toy boat. Ah, there it is.
There it is. Yeah.
I remember seeing this. I think this is like older pictures now because I remember seeing this. A mysterious creature zoomed right there.
Exactly.
Okay, I guess we'll go to the next article.
Yeah, go to the next article because we can't be on Mars the whole time. I mean,
the show is on Earth after all, right?
yeah, and soon we'll be getting our guest, Robert House, author.
No, Rob, that's it with the articles.
That's it?
Yeah?
All right. Okay, so our guest, Robert House, is going to be coming on at 8:15, author of Jack the Ripper and the Case for Scotland Yard's Prime Suspects. And, you know, a lot of people think that there is a real conspiracy with Jack the Ripper. Or animatronic.
We're doing the show.
Pardon?
That's why we're doing the show on Jack the Ripper, because there is a
The
conspiracy.
world's foremost serial killer. I mean, I have about 6 books just on him. I have this one that I'm currently reading right here, Jack the Ripper, CSI, Whitechapel, and it shows like how the buildings were. Like when you read this book, you really get into the effect of how it is. It's really fascinating, Jack the Ripper. I mean, I've been researching it for hours and hours and hours, and tonight we've got an expert, a Ripperologist. That's what they call people that study Jack the Ripper. and I think perhaps maybe you could call up Trish.
All right.
Pardon?
All right. Well, I will call up Trish. She's all excited.
And we'll be back after that, and we'll be getting our special guest Rob House at 8:15 tonight to be talking about this. So don't go away, folks. The best is yet to come. The main event is coming.
Yes. So don't go anywhere. You can run out and get yourself a bag of popcorn, but don't go too far.
Exactly.
Trish is talking. All right. So here she is.
We'll be back.
Jack the Ripper is the best-known name given to an unidentified serial killer who was active in the largely impoverished areas in and around the Whitechapel district of London in 1888. The name originated in a letter written by someone claiming to be the murderer that was widely disseminated in the media. The letter is widely believed to have been a hoax, and may have been written by a journalist in a deliberate attempt to heighten interest in the story. Within the crime case files as well as journalistic accounts, the killer was known as the Whitechapel murderer as well as Leather Apron. Attacks ascribed to the Ripper typically involve female prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of London and whose throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to proposal that their killer possessed anatomical or surgical knowledge. Rumors that the murders were connected intensified in September and October 1888. And letters from a writer or writers purporting to be the murderer were received by media outlets in Scotland Yard. The From Hell letter, received by George Lesk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, included half of a preserved human kidney, supposedly from one of the victims, mainly because of the extraordinarily brutal character of the murders, and because of media treatment of the events. The public came increasingly to believe in a single serial killer known as Jack the Ripper. Extensive newspaper coverage bestowed widespread and enduring international notoriety on the Ripper, and his legend solidified. An investigation into a series of 11 brutal killings in Whitechapel up to 1891 was unable to connect all the killings conclusively to the murders of 1888. 5 victims: Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes and Mary Jane Kelly, all murdered between August 31st and November 9, 1888. Are known as the Canonical Five, and their murders are often considered the most likely to be linked. As the murders were never solved, the legends surrounding them became a combination of genuine historical research, folklore, and pseudo-history. The term Ripperology was coined to describe the study and analysis of the Ripper cases. There are now over 100 theories about the Ripper's identity, and the murders have inspired multiple works of fiction.
All right. Thank you, Trish, thank you very much. Your voice is always well needed on this show of just 2 guys talking. You bring up the spark in the show,
Exactly. Oh, for sure, and it's gonna be great. I mean, there's many movies that have been made about Jack the Ripper, and the one I've seen was From Hell back in 2002, and that's what got me into it a bit. But it's a work of fiction in a way, because we don't actually know if it was Royal Masonic that were involved in it. Like they said, it was what did they say? It was a Royal Masonic conspiracy because the grandson of Queen Victoria got a woman pregnant, and she was like, I think, a prostitute, and they wanted to hide it because the heir to it would have been to the throne would have been a son whose his mom was a prostitute, and they didn't want that, so they hired some people. They hired like this Jack the Ripper, who was going to kill all the prostitutes till he found out, because they knew about it, and they knew about it, and they were going to blackmail the queen, and they hired this man called the Ripper who was going to kill them all. But that's just a theory, which I think it's hogwash.
But Rob, you know what this sounds like to me?
What?
How Jack the Ripper was actually Agent 007. I know it sounds weird, but there's a connection somewhere behind that. And it just hit me the other time because I was actually watching a commercial where they were going to show, what do you call it? The Agent 00, James Bond, Royal, what is it? Royal something. Someone could probably tell us.
Casino Royale?
Yes, Casino Royale, because I watched it in Anyhow, you've seen. I have to see it. I'm going to rewatch it one day. Well, not rewatch. I'm going to have to watch it. Period. Now the thing is I've noticed something that apparently the Queen really did have a 007, and they sent him always out to do these missions. Are you aware of that?
No.
Yes, believe it or not, I seen something on YouTube where they were talking about that. I did my research, and they were saying that actually the Queen had a 007. So when you're watching that movie, yes, there is a James Bond in real life. Could Jack the Ripper have been James Bond? I don't know. I'm just like speculating. Don't take my word for that.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, you're saying that they had this, whoever her agent was, and he killed all these women.
Could it be to get to the bottom of it? I just hit me like
Not kill them, to hide the, well, you know, to hide the evidence, you know. But the thing is, my personal favorite, who I think Jack the Ripper is, Aaron Kosminski, who was a man who was schizophrenic, had a hatred for women, and he was around, and apparently he was seen around the time of the murders, and even Scotland Yard, one of the heads of Scotland Yard said it was him in his writings, but they didn't have enough evidence to prove it. But I like your theory also. But we're gonna have an expert in tonight that's written a book right here, Jack the Ripper. And the case was Scotland Yard's prime suspect, Robert House. He's going to be coming on in about 3 minutes. And it's very, very fascinating because once you guys get into Jack the Ripper, you just can't get out of it. It's like the world's, like one of the world's greatest mysteries. And I think if it ever was 100% solved, there would be a lot of people that would be sad. Because did you know that there's in the United Kingdom, there's Ripper tours. And there's all kinds of Ripper stuff going on. Ripper tours, you can go where he killed, where he lived, and it's a lot of money, a lot of money-making operation. You must have heard about the Ripper tours?
Yeah.
And if I was in England, I'd surely go to it, you know. But yeah, this is what I do. I studied this. I like studying serial killers, Ripper, all this. We were going to do a show about serial killers, but then when I was able to get my guest on my favorite serial killer, Jack the Ripper, I was able to get the author Robert House. It's like, wow, it's fascinating. I'm really excited to know about Jack the Ripper from an expert himself into this.
Well, Rob, you know something? I always found these murderers, like serial murderers, to be intriguing. I wouldn't say so much interesting, because what's interesting? You go around killing and taking people's lives. That is the worst thing they can do. But yeah, I've always found I've always been intrigued by these serial murderers or serial case murderers. Like example, Richard Ramirez was one of them. Like for me, I was like, what the heck, man? This is like this guy. And at the end, what happened? He's actually getting married.
I know.
Married in jail. These guys, I bet you if Jack the Ripper were still alive today, he'd be getting married to a girl.
Yeah, exactly. And look, profiling, the psychology of catching a killer. I'm reading this book. I read like 3-4 books, and it talks about Jack the Ripper, Richard Ramirez. Another one was David Berkovich, the son of Sam. They talk a lot about these killers and the psychology of catching killers. It's a great book over here. I'm reading it. I read two, 3 different books at the same time. It never ends, you know. It's like I'm always researching it. You know, it's unbelievable. You know me. It's like we don't hear from me at nighttime, Mario. You know what I'm doing. I'm surely reading something like this. No.
Yeah, and what about Ted Bundy? I mean, we should just do a show all on these serial killers, but
tonight we're having a special guest, the most famous serial killer of them all. I'm not saying he was the worst killer, because there's a lot of killers that killed more. I mean, some of them killed 200, I think 200 or so. But we're getting Jack the Ripper, the world's first. They say the world's first serial killer and most famous. I mean, the Victorian age. I mean, it's just unreal, you know. All right. So Mario, I'm gonna get Rob House. Is there anything you want to say before I do this?
No, but I would appreciate if people have any questions, they could put on the, the Chatango, and I will post it up, send it to you, and so you can ask our guest. Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so let me try calling him. So you ready?
I'm very ready.
All right.
I'm ever ready, like the battery, you know?
Uh-oh. Oh boy. Call. How come I can't video call him? Uh-oh.
I'll put our beautiful Chatango up so that people can see what exactly was going on, because we want to, you have to be on the ball, because we're on the ball. We're always on the ball, you know?
We are, yeah.
And that's what our show is all about. And
Okay,
we'll
wait,
share
I'm calling
that.
you. Hold on. Hello?
Hello, Robert.
Robert, welcome to the MNR show.
Thank you.
How are you? It's great to have you on, and I have over here my co-star right here, Mario.
Hello, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So, welcome to the show. I've been very excited. I've been excited all week to have you on the show, and so you're how do I begin this? So would you like to tell us about yourself and how you got to be a ripperologist and how you got to write your book?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Okay. So I guess I got interested in Jack the Ripper case about, I don't know, about 10 years ago after reading Philip Sugden's book on the case, which is a great book. And, it's just a fascinating case because it's one of the most famous unsolved crimes in history. And, I found myself being, getting involved in these online message boards like casebook.org and JTR forums and discussing the case. And then I found that I became interested in one particular suspect, and that's the suspect that I wrote my book about. Philip Sugden sort of dismissed him as being a valid suspect in the case for various reasons. And the more I thought about it and researched him, the more I began to believe that the reasons he was dismissed were not really valid. So I started researching him myself and ended up finding some interesting stuff. And, over time I started to think that he is actually the most likely person to have been Jack the Ripper. And so I decided to write a book about it, and it came out a few years ago.
I have your book right here, Jack the Ripper and the Case for Scotland Yard's Prime Suspect, right here.
Yeah.
And the thing is, casebook.org, that is like an amazing site. I think that's one of the most amazing sites, like great websites for Jack the Ripper. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a small group of people around the world who study the case. And there's something like 50 or 100, maybe 50 people, I would say, who are experts in the case. And sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to turn off this noise here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great site for, there's a ton of information on the case posted there. And research is ongoing continuously, and people are, frequently posting new information. So, new things are being discovered all the time and being posted there, and, so it's a great site. And Howard Brown's site is also very good. That's called JTR Forums, and it's a similar thing.
I just find it fascinating that Jack the Ripper actually killed five women, but there's been rumored to be even more. Like there's maybe 8, 9 of them. Before, a couple of months before, there was like women that were slashed. I think Martha Tabarin and all of that.
Right. So there are generally 5 victims that most people agree were killed by Jack the Ripper. You know, I say most because there's a lot of debate on this actually still, but you know, I would say the majority of people who've studied the case over the years agree on 5 victims. Philip Sugden was one of the first to bring to attention some earlier potential victims. And he makes quite a good case for it. And then there are a few additional victims after the 5 so-called canonical Jack the Ripper victims. So, you know, in my opinion, he had, I would guess, more than 5 victims. I would guess something like 7 or 8, 6 to 8, something like that.
Okay, so how do I begin this? Like, how is it that he was able, like, to go in the nighttime and before Mary Kelly, her name is, the 4 of them before, how was he able to kill in the streets and mutilate them and take out, like, body parts without getting caught and doing it probably in the dark? Like, how is that possible, like, all the time?
There's a number of things here. I mean, for one thing, Whitechapel, you know, this is during the Victorian period in London, so the murders took place in 1888. You know, so there was this pre-electricity, the streets were lit by gaslight, and you know, it was actually quite dark at night. The gas lights were sort of few and far between, and they really didn't illuminate very much. You know, so I mean, the city would have been much darker than a modern-day city, for one thing. You know, the victims of Jack the Ripper were prostitutes, and most of them were, you know, street prostitutes who worked on the streets. They didn't have like a, you know, an apartment that they could bring their clients back to.
Right.
So, you know, the prostitutes basically worked, you know, in these out-of-the-way dark alleys and places where they didn't think they were going to, you know, be disturbed or discovered by the police. So, you know, it was really like they brought, you know, Jack the Ripper posing as a client, they would have brought him to these secluded locations anyways. So, you know, they kind of made what he was trying to do easier for him, really.
Okay, do you think he actually talked with them, or because some people I seen a video yesterday from the 1970s, and it was sort of like saying that he followed them from the back and he just slit their throat. But I think he didn't do that. I think he actually talked with them and went with them.
Yeah, it seems very likely that he talked with the victims. You know, there were a few witnesses who saw a person who was quite probably Jack the Ripper, you know, talking with the victims just prior to their murder. And, you know, he was talking, in at least 2 cases, he was seen talking, you know, standing with the woman, talking quite quietly. And, you know, so that was probably his MO, effectively, you know, was talking to the victims, convincing them to go, you know, to take him into a dark alley or something like that, and then murdering them once he got them there.
Do you think... Hello? Rob? I think we just lost Rob, guys. Hold on.
It happens.
Robert?
Yes.
Okay. We thought we lost you for a second.
Okay.
Okay. Where was I? Do you... now I forgot my train of thought. Do you think... Yeah, okay, got it. I remember. Do you think... Where did they get this idea that he had a cane, he had a hat, a top hat, and a cape, and was walking around like this? I mean, if he would have dressed like that, he would have been identified. I'm sure of it. Where did they get that? I'm sure he just had a deer stalker hat or something that looked pretty normal, not like this aristocratic guy that they made him out to be like.
Right. So I'm hearing my feedback there.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. this sort of mythological description of Jack the Ripper evolved, I think, over time. Although, at the time it was speculated by various people and newspapers that Jack the Ripper was an upper class, person who came into the West End to, commit these murders. There was one newspaper report that mentioned a man who walked past a murder site carrying a black leather bag, and that led to all sorts of speculation that the black bag was a doctor's bag, and it turned out that this person had nothing to do with the crimes anyway, but that sort of led to this idea that Jack the Ripper carried his knives around in a black sort of suitcase or doctor's bag or something like that. But this depiction of Jack the Ripper is, in my opinion, almost certainly pretty inaccurate. He was probably a local to the East End, which means, poor, lower class. It was a lower class working environment. So, as you suggested, a person who would be dressed in something like a top hat and a
cape,
a tuxedo and a cape would really stand out there. So.
And of course they would have caught him, just like this. And because I've seen on Amazon.com toys of Jack the Ripper, and it looks exactly like what I just described above, So I guess it's just a myth. And I bet if people knew how he really looked like, there'd be a lot of people that would be disappointed in it.
Yeah, right. It's kind of unusual that Jack the Ripper has become this mythological figure. And, it's true what you say. I think that if people knew the truth, there would be a sort of a disappointment because, he's not some kind of super harsh villain. He would have just been a very normal, average-looking person, probably.
And what amazes me is that it's never really been solved, the case yet, And what I was saying before you came on the show, if it was ever 100% solved, I'm sure there'd be a lot of people that would be disappointed because there'd be no books written, no more forums, Even if it was 100% solved, I think there'd still be people that would be skeptical.
Yeah, a lot of people say that there is certainly a great. It's, I don't want to say fun, but it's definitely an interesting case to study, and part of the reason it's interesting is because it's a big puzzle. It's like trying to solve this gigantic puzzle, and there's a lot of information out there, and so you can try and interpret this information in all sorts of different ways, coming up with all kinds of theories. And like I said, people are discovering new things all the time, so it's possible someone could find something that would solve the case. It's very unlikely that would happen, but it's certainly possible. So and if somebody did solve it, it would be a really big story, certainly.
What are your views on that? Like, if you go on Google, they could say how he looked like you just said, Jack the Ripper's face, and now they reconstructed it. I don't know how, and they came up with this guy that sort of looked to me he looked sort of Asian. Have you seen that picture?
I think I know the one you're talking about, and I don't really have any idea how they constructed that picture. I think you asked me a little bit about this before the show. There's
yeah, exactly. But I'm doing it for viewers,
There's a lot of false information out there on the web about about Jack the Ripper and about suspects, and there's a lot of stuff that gets repeated that's just incorrect. So, if somebody's really interested in the case, they go to one of these websites like JTR Forums or Casebook.org, and you can really find out the true story of Jack the Ripper. And then, there's a lot of great books out there. There's a lot of bad books on Jack the Ripper as well, but Philip Sugden's book is very good. There's a lot of Paul Begg's books are great. There's a lot of great books out there.
Exactly. And my newest one that I'm reading right now is Jack the Ripper CSI Whitechapel by Paul Begg and John Bennett.
Yes.
And I just got it and I still didn't finish reading it, and it shows how the buildings looked and how dark it was. And do you think when he did his murders, he did it in complete dark, like how, like to remove everything, like all like the body parts and everything? Do you think he had some kind of skill to do it, or was just he just did it like that?
You know, it would have been quite dark in most of these locations. You know, it wasn't like pitch black. There would have been a little bit of light, but I mean, certainly quite dark. You know, a place like Mitre Square would have been very dark, especially in the particular corner where the murder took place. So, you know, there was a lot of debate at the time and ever since about whether Jack the Ripper had surgical knowledge because he removed internal organs from some of the victims. You know, and there was debate at the time. So some of the doctors who you know, performed the autopsies claimed that they thought he did, and others claimed that they thought he didn't. And my belief is that he didn't have any surgical or medical knowledge really to speak of. I mean, possibly a very primitive form of knowledge, but I think he really, you know, he cut open the victim's abdomen and just sort of, you know, started removing things. I mean, he removed the intestines from 2 different victims. And, you know, I think at that point he's reaching in and sort of grabbing whatever organs he happens to lay his hand on and just, you know, pulling things out and cutting, you know, whatever he grabs in the dark. So I don't think that that really takes much surgical knowledge or ability at all, but, you know, if he had been going for particular organs, that would be a different thing. But I think he just grabbed things kind of at random, really.
Whatever he can get.
Right. I mean, in the case of Mary Kelly, it was a little bit different because he was indoors. He had a long time to perform the mutilations on the body after she was dead. And it was presumably much more well lit because there was a blazing fire going in the fireplace at the time, so he could have seen what he was doing. And in that case, he cut the heart out of the victim.
The night of the double murder, do you think in the first murder he was interrupted by the horse and that's why he left? The man with the horse that came in and not to get caught, he left and he was unsatisfied, so he went killing a second time?
Yes, I do think he was interrupted and left without without performing mutilations on the victim. But my theory on this is a bit controversial because most people believe that he was interrupted by the guy driving the horse cart who showed up at around 1 a.m. and pulled into the Duffield's yard there. My theory is that he was actually interrupted about 10 or 15 minutes earlier by this guy named Israel Schwartz, who was one of the really the prime witnesses who saw a person who may have been Jack the Ripper. You know, Schwartz was walking down the street, and he was just walking home, and he saw a man basically accosting a woman at the entrance of this sort of alleyway or courtyard. And he didn't want to get involved, really. He was kind of, you know, frightened, and he just rushed on past. And you know, my theory is that the killer at that time was afraid that, you know, this guy was going to run off and get the police and bring them back, and so he killed the victim quickly and then left the scene without performing any mutilations, because, you know, at the time he was seen, he was already attacking the woman, really. You know, he'd thrown her down on the ground, and he was kind of in the process of attacking her, although he hadn't killed her yet, but he was sort of caught in the act. So I think he wanted to just kill her so that she couldn't identify him, probably, and then get away from there as soon as possible.
And is this the one that Israel, is this the Israel Schwartz, is this the man that said that later on he wouldn't identify him because he was a Jewish? That's the one, eh?
It's unknown who the witness was. There's generally 2 candidates for the person who would have been the witness that we're talking about. So just to give some context for people who are listening who might not know about this, the suspect I wrote my book about was this guy named Aaron Kosminski, who was he was an immigrant from Poland, which at the time was part of the Russian Empire, and he was Jewish, and he was a hairdresser supposedly, although he'd been unemployed for long periods. And this part of London at the time was really largely a Jewish area, which is something that probably a lot of people don't really realize. It was something like, maybe I'm just going to throw a number out there, but something like 40 or 50% of the people living in the area were Jewish. So it was not unusual in any way that the person who ultimately was a witness and who testified or who identified Aaron Kosminski was also Jewish. So there's not anything unusual or suspicious or strange about that. But yes, so Aaron Kosminski was identified by a witness. So he was taken by the police to a particular location. He was identified by a witness, and then according to the police, specific police who were writing about him, when the witness found out that the suspect was also Jewish, he refused to testify. It's not really known exactly why that is, but
I heard it was because he didn't want to send, because he was Jewish himself, he didn't want to send a fellow Jew to the guillotine.
Right. It's not known if that was just inferred by the police or if he specifically said that.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of discussion about this, and one thing that's important to realize is that there was a very explosive sort of atmosphere of anti-Semitism in the East End at the time because of a variety of reasons, but largely because there was this large immigrant Jewish population who had started arriving in London really in the early 1880s, and it became this real wave of immigration throughout that decade. And then by the end of the decade, London was in the midst of kind of an economic depression. A lot of people were unemployed, and so the Jews started to be scapegoated really as stealing jobs from the native Englishmen, and so they were really blamed for all these problems in the East End. And then when the Jack the Ripper murders started, some newspapers and various people suggested that it was a Jewish person who did it, and that just it kind of led to a very explosive and kind of dangerous situation in the sense that the police were afraid that there were going to be anti-Jewish riots in the East End and things like that. So it's entirely possible that this person who was a witness did not want to testify, and possibly that was in the back of his mind, knowing that if he testified against a Jewish person, that there would be this outbreak of violence in the East End, which is probably true. But as I say in my book, probably the more important reason that he refused to testify is probably that he just wasn't certain about his identification at all, because the identification would have taken place probably a good deal of time after he saw the person, and he may have not really been able to identify him accurately.
I see. What about what was written on the wall that says the Jews will not be the men that are blamed for nothing?
So there's a lot of debate about, again, about whether that was written by the killer.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this was written in chalk on a wall above a spot where a part of an apron that had been worn by one of the victims, which was cut off by the killer and was covered with blood. It was left on the side of the street, and then above this apron was written this message. And it's really unknown whether the killer dropped this bloody piece of apron there and then wrote the message, or whether he just happened to drop it in front of this piece of graffiti, or whether maybe he read this piece of graffiti and intentionally dropped the apron there. You know, it's not really known exactly what happened. I tend to think there's a good possibility that the killer actually did write the graffiti, but exactly what is meant by it is very hard to figure out anyways. So
yeah, some say there's a Masonic and world conspiracy behind it, behind all this Jack the Ripper killings. What's your feeling on this for viewers?
I don't believe in any of that stuff really. I mean, there's been a lot of lot of pretty outlandish theories, I guess, proposed in the Jack the Ripper case. The Masonic theory is one of those. Another one is the idea that the royal family was somehow involved. You know, I mean, if you actually study serial killers, and particularly, you know, this type of killer, you know, I mean, Jack the Ripper, you know, getting back to the myth, there's this myth that Jack the Ripper was this sort of supervillain who was extremely cunning and, you know, maybe extremely intelligent and outwitting the police. You know, my belief is almost the exact opposite. I think that Jack the Ripper was actually a very primitive, you know, person. I don't think he was exceptionally intelligent or anything like that. You know, so I guess that, you know, if you study this type of killer, you know, the type of killer who's a post-mortem mutilator, in other words, you know, Jack the Ripper was much more interested in mutilating the victims after they were murdered. So he wasn't what you would call sadistic in the sense that he kind of got off on torturing his victims. You know, some killers are sadistic and they get off on torturing their victims, but Jack the Ripper killed his victims very quickly, and then he was mainly interested in mutilating them. So that's a very primitive and also quite a rare type of serial killer. And you know, it just makes much more sense to me that Jack the Ripper would have just been, you know, this type of person as opposed to being some, you know, part of some kind of complex conspiracy or some kind of plan to, you know, that the murders are supposed to be communicating a message or something related to the Masons or something like that.
Do you think that when he was walking on the streets after his murder, he would have blood everywhere, or he had an overcoat or something and covered his hands in the coat? Because I'm sure there must have been some blood on him.
Yes, there quite probably was blood on him. You know, I mean, he may have. It appears that he killed his victims in such a way that there would have been an arterial spray from cutting the throat, but that it would have gone away from him anyway. So
that, yeah.
What's that?
No, I said that. Yeah, for sure that. But when he was like cutting them up and removing the pieces and everything, he would have had blood on his hands.
Right. Yeah. So he certainly would have had blood on his hands. You know, I mean, he could have wiped off the blood. It probably also was. You know, I think blood at night is quite dark, you know, against dark clothing. I don't know that it would have been, you know, terribly obvious necessarily he had blood on his hands. I mean, another thing to remember is that there were a lot of slaughterhouses in the area, so there would have been, you know, seeing a person walking around with blood on their clothes wouldn't have been necessarily that uncommon. Although, you know, he almost certainly would have tried to conceal it in some way, I would imagine, either by wiping off the blood or, you know, as he said, hiding his hands in his sleeves or, you know, something like that, or wearing an overcoat, for example. But the police did believe that Jack the Ripper would have had to have a place that he could go back to like wash the blood off of his clothing. So, you know, some kind of so they thought either he would have been living alone or, you know, would have had some place that he could go and have some privacy to clean himself up after the murders.
Do you think he lived in the area, like on Dorset Street?
Well, I think he lived in the area, certainly. Yeah, I think he lived in the East End.
Okay.
I mean, Aaron Kosminski, for example, lived at the time probably it's not 100% certain where he lived, but he almost certainly lived with one of his siblings. And my guess is that he probably lived with his brother, who was named Wolf.
Wolf, yes.
And Wolf Abrams, his name was Abrams because the Kosminski family, they all changed their name to Abrams when they came to London. So Aaron's brother was named Wolf Abrams, and he lived at 25 Providence Street, which is one street to the south of where the Stride murder took place. In fact, you can walk from Aaron Kosminski's house to the Stride murder in, I would say, under a minute. And it's quite close to all the murder scenes, really.
The thing is, didn't the police go to all the houses, like door to door, to find out any information?
Yes, they did.
And do you think the Ripper was interviewed? Because they interviewed a lot of people, like so do you think in the process of it he was interviewed and they found nothing abnormal about him to raise suspicion? Hello? Oh, we just lost Robert.
Again, but he'll be back. It would happen before.
Yeah, there's a problem with this call. Hold on while we try to get the call back. But it's a really interesting topic, no, Mario?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things to know about this case.
Well, a lot.
See, here we're looking at the picture. Where's he calling from? Do you know?
I don't know.
Maybe
hold on, I'm getting him back. Oh, he's calling back. Okay, hold on.
Okay, good.
Robert.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. Sometimes Skype might do this, We're glad to have you back.
Yes, I'm glad to be.
Great. Are you there? Robert.
Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Getting back to, where was I now? Do you think Jack the Ripper was interviewed?
Yes, I think he probably was interviewed by the police, yeah.
Okay. What about the Ripper letters? Do you think any of them were genuine?
So the police received, I think, hundreds of letters from people claiming to be Jack the Ripper. So, the vast majority of them are believed to be fake.
Why? The question is why would people want to fake themselves to give? Like, why would people want to fake to be Jack the Ripper?
We lost him again.
Yeah, I know we're having a bad connection, but why? I wonder why, Rob. Why would people want that? What's their point?
Well, I think they did that. Some journalists wanted to do that,
Why though?
To sell newspapers. Okay, I'm trying to get him back.
So we should ask him why he comes back on. Why would anybody want to do that? Why would you and I want to claim to be Jack the Ripper for?
Exactly. Right now, I think he's offline. It must be on his end.
Yeah, it has to be. Maybe it's Skype isn't doing so well. Who knows?
Exactly.
Skype's perfect.
But who's asking that? What did the graffiti say? The graffiti said. The Jews, J-U-E-W-S, the Jews will not be the men that are blamed for nothing. That's what it said, and the inspector erased it all, and he did not want this to be seen before the public woke up, because he didn't want anti-Semitism to rise. That's why he wrote that.
Well, yeah, it's a big thing,
Exactly. Oh, for sure.
I mean, they don't want any of these signs to be out there. There'll be chaos in the streets.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
from both sides, Jews and non-Jews. They'll be like attacking each other. So that's why it's better, you know,
Robert,
fight it.
how come, Robert? Hello? He's on my cell phone. What the heck? Hello? Robert? Wait. He's on my cell phone. Okay. Okay, he's coming back. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, welcome back.
Hi. I'm going to just try moving here in case it's a problem on my end.
Okay, okay. Alright. Where was I now? So we said that... Pardon?
The interviews.
Yes, the interviews. So Jack the Ripper must have been interviewed by him, and then we talked about the letters, right? So do you think any of the letters were genuine, or they were all fake, in your opinion, Robert?
So my theory is that, yeah, there was only a couple that were possibly authentic. I believe may have been from the killer. Is called the From Hell letter. And that's one of the ones that's not signed Jack the Ripper. It's actually signed Catch Me When You Can. And it included a portion of a human kidney, sort of in a box, which is, you know, the main reason I think it may have been authentic, because Jack the Ripper actually took a kidney from one of the victims.
And I've seen those letters, and it seems like because the other letters, they look all prim and proper, but that one looks like, the way it was written, it looked like it was somebody that was like not all there in the head, like maybe had mental issues or something. It just looks really evil, like really, how can you say, very intense.
Yeah, it seems like it's written by someone who's kind of semi-literate, and you know the language is pretty primitive, and you know he talks about eating the organs. He said he fried the other half of the kidney and ate it, and you know, I mean, in fact, that is consistent with this type of killer that I was mentioning before, post-mortem mutilator. Well, you know, specifically, Aaron Kosminski was insane, so he was probably schizophrenic, really. And so I researched other schizophrenic serial killers, and they're actually quite rare, but a good proportion of them actually, you know, were post-mortem mutilators and engaged in cannibalism and things like that. So this part of the letter would be consistent with that type of killer in any case.
I have a question here from one of my audience. They say, why would anybody fake Jack the Ripper letters?
You know, that's a very good question. I can't say I really thought too deeply about it, but I suppose, you know, I don't know, people just liked, I honestly don't know that I can answer that question accurately. I mean, people would have liked maybe the notoriety or playing a prank on the police or, you know, something like that.
Or maybe to sell newspapers? Journalists?
Right. So, you know, I mean, the initial letter was said to have been written by a newspaper journalist. So, you know, I guess it's entirely possible that maybe a large proportion of them were written by newspaper journalists, as you suggest, to write newspapers. That's probably was the case with the initial letter that gave the name Jack the Ripper to this killer. That's known as the Dear Boss letter, and that one was apparently written by a guy who worked for the newspaper.
Oh yeah, exactly. The thing about Jack the Ripper is he was never caught, and some people suggested that he committed suicide after the last killing because his mind went ballistics after he did a terrible mutilation on Mary Jane Kelly. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think he either committed suicide or he went insane, and that was Aaron Kosminski, and he was locked up afterwards?
You know, I mean, there are a lot of people who claim who speculate that serial killers never stop killing.
Right.
You know, and so that if they stop, there has to be some reason, like they were either incarcerated or they, you know, they died, they committed suicide, or they moved away, or you know, something like that. So, you know, I mean, one of the other, I guess you'd say, main suspects in the case was a teacher named Montague John Druitt, and he committed suicide shortly after the Mary Kelly murder. And it seems like that's probably one of the main reasons that he was suspected. Well, it's not really known why he was suspected. He may have been suspected by his family, but it is quite possible that something happened that would have stopped this person from killing, or at least to cause him to slow down. There have been cases where serial killers have either stopped for long periods of time, or they've kind of slowed down the rate at which they're committing murders. Gary Ridgway is one example. The Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, stopped killing for a long time. So, I have suspected that it's entirely possible that the real reason, if Aaron Kosminski was actually Jack the Ripper, that the real reason he stopped killing was because he knew he was under surveillance by the police. The police, this one policeman who wrote about Aaron Kosminski claimed that he was under surveillance after the identification. So, there are other accounts that I go over in my book of detectives who later wrote about conducting surveillance on a suspect in the case who, and at least in one of these examples, the person was quite possibly Aaron Kosminski, in my opinion. Although he doesn't name the person. But, if Kosminski knew that he was being watched by the police, it's entirely possible that he would have, stopped killing.
Exactly. But isn't there, like, the head of the CID, Scotland Yard, said they knew Jack the Ripper but couldn't prove his guilt in court? It wasn't the chief investigator who said it was Aaron Kosminski. He wrote it down.
Right. So this is Robert Anderson, who was the head of the CID at the time of the Ripper murders, and he wrote a sort of a memoir that was published in 1910. So this was 22 years after the Ripper murders took place, and in that he claimed that the police knew who Jack the Ripper was, but as you say, they didn't have sufficient evidence to convict, so they had to let him go, basically. And Anderson in the book, he says that he can't reveal the name of the suspect. But then this other guy named Donald Swanson, who was the detective who was actually in charge of the Ripper investigation, he owned a copy of Anderson's book, and in the margin he wrote in pencil a bunch of information about the suspect, including the name of the suspect, which was Kosminski. So that's how we know that the person who Robert Anderson claimed was Jack the Ripper was Kosminski.
Do you think Robert Anderson knew exactly what he was talking about, or was speculating? Like, if for him to say it's him, it is him, like, without a shadow of a doubt, or you think there was leeway to this?
I think that there was leeway because Anderson actually wrote. He wrote about the case in numerous articles that were, printed in various places, and he said on at least a few occasions that he described it as a moral certainty, which is a term from philosophy that basically means it's not 100% certain, but certain. He felt certain enough about it that he was convinced that this person was Jack the Ripper, but not 100% certain. But as I say in the book as well, this exact type of thing happened in other cases, and the most notable example that I can think of was the Green River case, where the head of the Green River killer task force claimed that he believed for years that Gary Ridgway was the murderer, but he couldn't prove it. He didn't have the 100% proof, right. But he believed, deep down, he believed that Ridgway was the killer, but he couldn't prove it, and he wouldn't have been able to say that he was 100% certain either. But then when when they finally were able to process the DNA, and it came back with a match to Gary Ridgway, this guy was not surprised at all. He said, "I knew it was Ridgway all along." So I think it was something very similar to that happened with Anderson.
So, how can I say this? So Aaron Kosminski was probably, what, like 80%, 90% probable Ripper, the Ripper himself.
I mean, I wrote a book on it, so I'm kind of, I'm not the most objective person probably to say this, but I think,
Right.
yeah, I think there's a good chance that he was Jack the Ripper. I would say 70% or something.
Okay. Is there? I've looked up pictures. I've only seen one picture of Aaron Kosminski. I think I sent it to you. I'm not sure, but it's like a drawing of him.
Right. There's no known photograph or picture of Aaron Kosminski. I've looked for one. With my research partner who lives in London, we together did a lot of genealogical research, and we were able to contact the descendants of Aaron Kosminski's brothers and sister. And, we were hoping that we could find a photograph of him, but they didn't have one, so. And the other thing is that there probably was a photograph of him in his record from Leavesden Asylum, because all the mental asylums in London started taking photographs of the inmates as a matter of procedure around the time that Aaron Kosminski was sent to Leavesden Asylum from Colney Hatch. So, I've looked at his records from Colney Hatch. There's no photograph there, and the records from Leavesden Asylum are missing. They just were lost over the years. But there probably was a photograph of him in his Leavesden Asylum records.
Okay, I've heard that Scotland Yard has information that they don't want to release to the public about this, about the Jack the Ripper case. Do you know anything about this?
So there's an author named Trevor Marriott who wrote a book on Jack the Ripper. And he's been trying to get them to release these the Special Branch files. The Special Branch was a division of the Metropolitan Police that was primarily involved in, kind of investigating threats to the domestic security of London. And the main thing that they really were focused on was, like Fenian Irish separatists who were, involved in bombings and things like that. And so the Special Branch was mainly involved in investigating those types of people. And, it was an organization that maintained a large network of informants, and they gathered information on all sorts of things. But for the most part, they were not involved. In fact, there's no evidence that they were involved in in any way in the Jack the Ripper investigations. That said, there are these Special Branch files that are not currently accessible to by the public. And in those files, it's known that there are a couple of references to the Jack the Ripper murders, but it appears that it's probably nothing that's very important. I mean, in other words, it's kind of hard to explain this, but they were collecting tons and tons of information all the time from people like landlords or just people on the street, or a policeman would say something, and they just collected all this information in their files, and it would have been a combination of things that were not important. I mean, the vast majority of it was probably not terribly important at all. And I think there were probably a couple of references where a landlady or something said that she believes her, one of her
Tenants.
yeah, tenants was Jack the Ripper because he goes out late at night.
Yeah, I've read that part.
Yeah, so I mean, these files that Trevor Merritt is trying to get released are probably not very relevant to the Jack the Ripper murders, actually, and but they haven't been released yet. So
okay, what about also? They said that Jack. I know that apparently around that time, Jack the Ripper. They said he left. He went to New York, and after that, this particular suspect, there was all kinds of the same type of murders in New York, same mutilations. They go. The reason he wasn't caught in London is because he went to New York after.
Right. I don't know that much about a lot of these other suspects in the case. There was George Chapman, who went to, I believe, New Jersey, and then there was a similar murder there. And there was also there was a murder that took place in Manhattan.
Yes.
It was a prostitute whose name I forget. I think it was Carrie Brown. And there was a suspect in that. There were a couple of suspects in that case who were, I think, Algerians who worked on cattle boats. And that guy, some people were kind of interested in him as a suspect in the Jack the Ripper case as well. But Trevor Merritt, his book was talking about a person named Carl Fagenbaum, who I know nothing about actually, but I believe he traveled all over. So I mean, Trevor Merritt claims that he committed murders all around the world, but I can't say that I hold those theories in very high regard.
To all of this. What about another theory? Because one of our guests is asking, Jill the Ripper. What's your thoughts on that?
I would be very surprised if Jack the Ripper was female. I think that Jill the Ripper theory is connected to the idea that let me think, that it was a woman who was an abortionist, I think.
Yes, an abortionist. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I know quite a bit about the case, and I know quite a bit about Aaron Kosminski, but there are so many suspects, and I'm not very knowledgeable about all of the theories that are out there.
Okay.
I try and just focus on Kosminski and.
Okay. Getting back to Aaron Kosminski, so if he was, like, Jack the Ripper seemed like he knew what he was doing, he was pretty cool, a cool, like, collective guy. Do you think someone that has schizophrenia could actually commit these murders and appear normal to people? Did he hear voices that were telling him to do this?
There's a few questions in there, so,
okay.
People, schizophrenia is a very complicated, complex disease, complex mental disease. And there's a lot of debate, even, currently about exactly how to define the disease, And some people believe that there are, schizophrenia is actually a collection of different mental disorders, or that there's a range of schizophrenic, type mental disorders. And I'm no expert in this really myself, but I think that there's a wide range of severities of people who have schizophrenia, and the symptoms can sort of fluctuate over time, and it's also it's a degenerative disorder. So people with schizophrenia tend to get worse. It starts off kind of slowly and then gets worse over time if it's unmedicated, which at that time it would have been. I read a very good book by Ellen Sachs, who was a woman who had schizophrenia, and it's entirely possible to hide the symptoms. You know, I mean, she wrote about how she was thinking these thoughts that were crazy, and she would just hide those things from. She wouldn't tell people those thoughts because she knew she would be, you know, looked at as being crazy. You know, so, you know, I think it's entire. The other thing you have to remember is that it wouldn't have required much conversation on the part of this person to convince the prostitutes to go off with him. You know, he would have had to talk to them for just, you know, under a minute or something to say, let's go in the alley, you know, something like that. And, you know, these prostitutes were very poor, they were desperate.
Drunk.
A lot of them were alcoholics, so, you know, I don't think they were as careful probably as they should have been. So yes, I mean, you know, a lot of people have claimed that because Aaron Kosminski was schizophrenic, that it would be unlikely that he would be Jack the Ripper, but I don't agree with that assessment. So the other part of your question about hearing voices, you know, it's in Aaron Kosminski's medical record that he heard voices, that he said that he obeyed what he called an instinct that kind of told him what to do, and he said he knew the movements of all mankind. And so, you know, yes, he had oral and then later visual hallucinations. And, you know, I spoke with you briefly about this before the show.
Yes.
I believe that in a lot of the cases where, you know, schizophrenic people, first of all, are, you know, the vast majority of them are not violent at all.
Right.
Just like the vast majority of, you know, regular people are not violent at all. With schizophrenics who are violent, I think in a lot of the cases, the violence is sort of it doesn't come from the oral hallucinations. I mean, in some cases it does, but in a lot of the cases, you know, especially with a schizophrenic serial killer, I think that there has to be, you know, a huge amount of anger and other problems apart from just the schizophrenia that really is the motivating factor behind the person wanting to commit murder. So, you know, it's probable that that if Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper, it's probable that he was also a psychopath, which means he was a sociopath, which means he had this you know, personality disorder, which caused him to have a great hatred for people and, you know, probably women. You know, like in the McNaughton memorandum, where it specifically talks about Kosminski as a suspect, it says that he had a great hatred of women. You know, so you'd expect that Jack the Ripper had this, you know, this huge, you know, this great amount of hatred for maybe people in general, and so that, you know, this is the type of traits that a sociopath would have. So when you combine a sociopath or a psychopath with a person who is psychotic, then you might get something like Jack the Ripper.
Another question I have, we've talked about it, but this is because people will be asking me later on. Apparently he ate out of the gutters and he didn't wash.
Right, so that's in his, there's a certificate that was written out by a doctor to certify that he was insane, effectively. And so he wrote down all his various symptoms of insanity, and amongst those was that he refused to drink water from the tap, and he refused to eat food that was given to him by other people. And then later in the asylum, it was said that he refused to take a bath because his instinct told him not to take a bath. You know, it's one thing that's entirely possible, if not likely, is that he may have thought that people were trying to poison him. This is a very common sort of delusion among people who have schizophrenia, is that they're being poisoned. So, it's entirely possible the reason that he refused to drink water except from tap and to take food that was offered to him was because he believed he was being poisoned, and hence he would have, picked up food out of the gutter. So I think that that's sort of the explanation behind that.
Okay.
I can't really explain why he would have refused to take baths, but I think it had something to do with probably some delusion that he had about water or something like that.
But this was after in the asylum, not before.
It's not really known.
Okay, because the thing is, do you think Jack the Ripper was able to function in society like an everyday normal man, whether it was Aaron Kosminski or somebody else? No.
Yeah, I think that he probably was able to function in society. I mean, I don't think he was probably able to function very well in society, but I think he was probably able to get by. I mean, Aaron Kosminski, for example, was unemployed for long periods of time, and he probably couldn't really take care of himself. I think he was being taken care of by his siblings. He may have, slept on the streets or walked around, all night or something like that. But, I also think that his insanity probably kind of came on gradually. So, at the time of the Ripper murders, it was 2.5 years before he was actually sent to the asylum. So he may have been less insane, actually, at the time of the murders than he became later. I mean, in his case, his schizophrenia really degenerated over the years, so that in the later years, before he died, he's extremely debilitated and, just kind of muttering to himself, and practically catatonic, really.
Catatonic, schizophrenia, paranoid. Do you think that Jack the Ripper had, or Aaron Kosminski had enough knowledge to do all of this, like even with his schizophrenia, like to move, like to plan all this out? You think it was an organized serial killer or disorganized serial killer?
I tend to think that Jack the Ripper was somewhat disorganized, although the FBI, who initially came up with this sort of these definitions or these categories of organized and disorganized, they have since stopped categorizing serial killers along those lines because they found that so many of the killers were sort of in the mixed category. In other words, they had some traits that were organized, they had some traits that are disorganized. That's probably the case with Jack the Ripper. But, although schizophrenic serial killers often are disorganized, they have disorganized characteristics, like they don't try to hide the body, they don't do a lot of planning beforehand. There certainly are, plenty of examples of people who have committed murders and then, they try to avoid detection. They try to avoid doing things that are going to cause them to get arrested. Things like that. I mean, Robert Napper is an example like that. He was somewhat organized, although he was schizophrenic, and he committed murders that were quite similar, actually, to the Jack the Ripper murders in the sense that he, mutilated the victims really severely after they were dead. So, I think that Jack the Ripper was, there are a lot of characteristics of those murders that are quite disorganized and quite, primitive, really, just quite brutal. Like, they don't seem like they were done by a person who's very controlling. A lot of serial killers who are more organized, like, say, Ted Bundy or something like that, they like to kind of be in control of the victims. So they're much more kind of confident in the sense that, Bundy, for example, was quite charismatic and, outgoing, really. And so I think he would have been much more comfortable around people. I get the impression that Jack the Ripper was a real loner. I don't think he really interacted with people very much, if at all. And I think he was a very primitive type of killer.
Yeah, I could tell you a crazy story. When I started researching Jack the Ripper in 2011, I'm not going to mention names, but I know someone who claims that they are a witch, and they told me they could go back in time. So one time I just like told this person, are you able to go back in time in Whitechapel to go there? And the witch didn't want to go, but she says, okay, since I know you, I'll go back in time and see it. And apparently, I don't know, she went back in time and she told me it was horrible. She didn't want to do it. She was scared. And she told me that Jack the Ripper was the royal family. He was part of the royal family, the grandson of Queen Victoria, and he was Jack the Ripper. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but take it as you want. And when she told me this, I just wonder if that's even possible to go back in time, which I know it's not your expertise, but I just thought I'd tell you this story because it's kind of interesting.
That certainly is strange. Yeah, I can't say I know much about it, but I strongly doubt that the royal family had anything to do with the murders.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Exactly. Do you think, in closing the show, because we're going to be closing up soon, do you think that Aaron Kosminski, his family, like they let him out at nighttime? I mean, if he was watched by his family, like how would he go out? You know, at nighttime, wouldn't they say where you going and follow him? You know, especially if they knew he was crazy. Like, didn't have any suspicion of him.
You know, I don't think they controlled him to the extent that they had him locked up in the house or that they could tell him not to go out or something like that. I suspect. I do believe, though, that they quite possibly suspected that he may have been Jack the Ripper. Or, you know, it's at least possible. So, you know, I mean, this is my own personal theory. And it's supported by some documents that I mentioned in the book. And you know, there are some mentions of like that, you know, a suspect was brought to the attention of the police by a woman who suspected like her close relatives, for example. You know, one of her close relatives who suspected was Jack the Ripper. You know, and if that's the case, if that actually happened, then that means that, you know, he was kind of turned into the police by a relative who may have suspected him. But, you know, I don't really think that his brothers and sisters could have controlled him to the extent where they wouldn't let him out at night, for example, or something like that. Although that did certainly happen. I mean, in fact, a lot of people who were insane and who probably should have been in asylums were actually, you know, sort of cared for in the homes of relatives and things like that. And in fact, sometimes people did lock people up in rooms, you know, and things like that. So, you know, I mean, it's entirely possible that that happened. You know, for example, it's possible that that happened after the family learned that the police were conducting surveillance on the house. But, you know, one of the hardest things about researching Aaron Kosminski is how little we actually know about him. Most of what we know about Aaron Kosminski comes from his asylum records and, you know, from some genealogical information and, you know, documents and things like that. And then from, you know, these brief mentions of him by the police, you know, various members of the police or things like that. But apart from that, you know, there's very little known about him, about, you know, his family life. You know, very little is known about his personality or, you know, anything like that. It's been very difficult to research him just because there's not a huge amount of information that, you know, is available about his life.
Right. And are you still researching it? Are you still researching Jack the Ripper, Aaron Kosminski? Are you going to be writing a new book, any new information in the near future or anything like that?
I haven't been researching the case so much in the last, you know, year or so. I was researching it a bit a couple of years ago. And, you know, like I said, I have these research partners in England, and some new information has come out since my book was published. It's not in the book.
Okay.
And some of it's quite interesting. I don't think I have time to go into it right now.
Right.
But some of that might at some point go into like a future article, or possibly if there's a new edition of the book or something like that. Although I did, I presented most of this information at the Jack the Ripper conference in 2012, which was in England, where I gave a talk. So.
Oh, really? Do you have a link to it? Is that or anything? Was it taped or anything?
I'm not sure if it was taped, but I mean, I have a document that I wrote up, kind of my talk really, and then along with some pictures and things like that.
Okay, so you were with other ripperologists.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and one last question: how long does it take to become a ripperologist? How much studying do you have to do?
Practically none. I think that there's a lot of people who might call themselves ripperologists after having read one book. I don't really know. There's no real qualifications for it. But there's a lot of people that are posting on those sites that are very knowledgeable. Then there's a lot of people posting on the sites who are not terribly insightful or terribly knowledgeable about the case, I would also say. But take these people you mentioned. Paul Begg and John Bennett. There's lots of really great researchers out there who are still doing great work. So
Martin Fido.
Yeah, Martin Fido. I think Martin Fido hasn't really done much research in the case since since the late '80s or something like that. But Stuart Evans, of course. And there's a
guy called Donald something, I think.
Donald Rumpelow.
Yeah.
There's lots of great, there's lots of really intelligent researchers who've contributed, a great deal to the case over the years. But there's a sort of a new generation of ripperologists now, and the research continues. But I haven't been so involved in it in the last couple of years. I've just been doing other things.
Okay. Any final thoughts? Do you think Jack the Ripper will ever know?
It's quite possible that the case will never be solved. It's in fact probable that the case will never be solved. I do think it's possible that some additional information might come out that might, really support one or another of the theories without, solving it 100%. You have to remember that the police at the time were unable to solve the crime, so the possibility of someone solving the crime now is very small. But, it's possible that some new information might come to light, in something that's in a
memoir,
in a box somewhere, a file or something. In fact, I thought that I was on the track of finding some of this stuff myself, because I found a person who had all these files from all these mental asylums, and I thought that I was on the verge of discovering Aaron Kosminski's asylum record, which would have had just a lot of information about him, and it would have probably had his photograph, like I said, and it would have been a huge discovery. But well, it turned out that the files that this person had did not include the ones I was looking for. But it was entirely possible that that may have been the case. So that type of discovery is the type of thing that still is very possible. And then if you find Aaron Kosminski's asylum record, who knows what's in there? It could be anything, and it could be something that really makes him seem much more like a valid suspect than we know at present. Because we don't really have that much of his asylum records at this point. Most of them were really lost.
Right. All right. So where can we get your book, Jack the Ripper and the Case for Scotland Yard's Prime Suspect, at Amazon? Is that correct?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it, pretty much any of the online booksellers. There's also there's a Kindle version of the book. There's an audio book that you can get on audible.com. untitled.com. And yeah, that's it. And I have a Facebook page for it as well if people are interested. There's some stuff I've posted on there.
Yeah, all right, good. So thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we hope you can come back on the show at some time. And I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the MNR Live TV show. And this show will be on YouTube, and I will post it on your wall once it's recorded later tonight.
Okay, thanks, Robert.
You're welcome. So have a good night.
Okay, you too.
Thank you. Bye. So, Mario, lots of information about Jack the Ripper. I mean, it seems before we end the show, just before, as soon as we answer questions, we get answers. There seems to be more and more questions that pop up. That's why it's such a fascinating case.
Yeah, but it's never been solved, and unfortunately, we haven't solved it tonight. But we just know more about it.
Yes, maybe one day. Imagine we MNR Live TV with Robert House. We do solve it one day. We never know. But until then, until next week, we still won't know, if that makes sense.
We won't.
We probably won't know. But one day maybe. But for this week, that's it for this week's show. We hope you enjoyed the show on Jack the Ripper and our guest Robert House. And you can get his books at Amazon.com, Kindle version, written book, and everything. And that's it for my final thoughts for tonight. So we'll be back next week with another MNR Live TV show.
Yes, I'm glad you liked our show. We want to see you back next week, and keep researching and research. That's it. We're out of here. Good
night.